Hello, good morning, and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, and disembodied hands, Quindy, Justin, John, our absentee minions, and Kiki, who has decided that she's gonna sit by the door instead of coming in to say hi. Or wait! Come on! Up! Up! Good girl! Yay! And Kiki, the real reason you all show up to see this show. Yes, the real reason. Princess Kiki, right? Yeah, you're a bit slobbery for a princess, you know. Bit slobbery and a bit smelly. Yeah, just gotta say that. We need to bath you. Yes, there's a bath this weekend. Oh, a bath. Yes, the Kiki has been summoned. She hears me do the intro and she knows. Yes, yeah, it's a good girl. Who's a good girl, Keekster? Good girl. Yeah, it's a good girl. All right, you ready? Okay. Yep. Good girl. Yay. Yeah, do I have to open that just a little? You're just gonna want to get that stuff. Nope. Yeah, Mama's gonna go get it. Nope. All right, Papa, settle down. Good girl. There was a spider on the inside of our screen door this morning, and it was a big one, so I rescued it because David gives me disapproving looks when I squish them, and I rescued it with a Kleenex and just threw it outside and closed the door so it could crawl off and go somewhere else that isn't inside my home. And Kiki, of course, upon seeing the Kleenex go outside, that's her favorite prey. So now she's like totally all into it. Hey, League Miniatures Den. Hey, everybody. The better to sniff other princesses with, yes. Yeah, her nose looks huge on camera. Yep. And we know the camera just emphasizes the size of everything. We'd rather it wouldn't. Yes, he rated before the stream started, yes. I know, I saw that. I was hurrying. All right. Today we're going to work on some metallics. I think I'm kind of there. Might black in some leather. Need to get more of these warm tones on there. I think I'm going to use... I do love my dark leather. Maybe... Where's my black and brown? It went to hide. There it is. I do like to use black and brown or walnut if I want a really dark leather. Walnut would... I use them both pretty much the same. If I base coat with walnut, I'm going to highlight with black and brown or russet. And if I base coat with black and brown, I'm usually going to highlight with more of a reddish brown, bringing it up. Because black and brown has a lot of red oxide in it. So it actually is a reddish brown. It does have a reddish shift. It was not a big spider by Aussie standards, for sure. I'm not sure how big UK spiders are. But it was a big spider by Anne's standards, which means like that. Oh, did I miss it? Turgeon. Hey, no woofing. If the squirrel steals your Kleenex, you just got a deal. Double sub-anniversary. Happy double sub-anniversary. There. For Turgeon, my biggest book fan. Finger hearts. Oh, yeah. Meetings are dumb. Yep, meetings are dumb and counterproductive, and I'm waiting for like American business culture to eventually realize this, but they haven't so far, so I don't have much hope. Luckily, being outside of American business culture, I'm safe from them now, more or less. I forgot to put my thing here. I am just like discombobulated today. David had to get up early because he had an early meeting at work, and it's a huge like festival, like conference day at his work, and so they essentially he couldn't drive because it would be absolutely zero parking, because it all spills over from the amphitheater, and he had to bike, so he had early meeting and had to bike to work, and thus I had to get up early, which you know, means that it goes, he wakes me up before my alarm goes off, and that's just uncivilized. I'm sorry. The Scottish Feline Depot. Now you need to like you really need like a cat blanket that you knit with Scottish Feline Depot knitted in. Not that, I'm sure that knitting letters is like a super pain in the butt. But still, now I'm tempted to try it someday. Although I am not the Scottish canine or Scottish Feline Depot. Yes, so uncivilized. Oh my gosh. All right, I'm going to start with walnut. I want to go, because she's got kind of a cold color scheme. So instead of going with a warmer tone, even though her skin and her hair are warm, I'm gonna preserve that being the one bastion of warmth on this model, and I'm going to go with walnut to start with. Yeah, he can bike to work, and that's good. Yeah, before the alarm is just uncivilized, Gibson. But no, he's my heat source, so I can't exile him to the couch. I'm one of those people who gets cold easily. As I will not generalize, but as many women do as they get older. We're all endothermic. Many of us are endothermic anyway. I personally am endothermic. I rely on my exothermic husband to keep me warm. Therefore, he is barred from exile. But yeah, part of the reason we moved here, Shadow Raven, is that he really wanted to be able to bike to work. That's part of why we settled on this house. Alrighty, I still am not sold on the leggings. I'm kind of annoyed that you can't really tell if they're metal or not. Like, and it seems like they wouldn't be, because usually if you've got like the plate with the chain coif, or the chain, not a coif, like the chain skirt, you wouldn't really have plate underneath that. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't need that. I'm a really, like, he doesn't really wake me up, Riot Boy, so I'm, like, pretty okay with having not separate rooms. I know a lot of people do move to that model, especially if they have snoring spouses or thrashing spouses. So I get it. All right, so we're going to block these in, just so I can start to see what I really need to do down here. And I mean, I could go with a blue. It would just be up against this other blue, which would annoy me. So color composition. We're going to be figuring out color composition today and seeing what I want to do. I could also make this strap on the shield blue. That would help with color composition. Color composition is not just color choices, but how you utilize the colors and move them around the model. How you repeat them to move the eye of the viewer around the model, rather. Because that's a thing. If you didn't know, that's a thing. And it's actually a semi-important thing, because people will kind of sense, they may not be able to define it if they're not artists and haven't been taught to look for it, but if like there's some color on your model that's distracting, or that is kind of like an empty loop, as in it's like only like on one side of the model, or it's only, you know, on a couple spots and they're kind of weirdly placed, like it won't be pleasing to people. They may not be able to define it, why they're kind of dissatisfied or why the color scheme doesn't work for them, but they'll feel it. Because even when we don't consider ourselves artsy, our eyes still look for contrast, and we still like kind of like track contrast around and light colors around a surface. It's kind of something we do almost subconsciously. Now, it doesn't mean that Kiki's trying to get through I can hear her pawing at the glass door because she wants to go out and get Gambeson. Yeah, but there's like a chain skirt underneath here, so. But yes, so got my white in there, my white in there, my white there. I mean, the easiest answer is to go black with the pants, because it's not going to distract from anything. But if I do that, then I want to repeat that somewhere. I could go black with the central leather, which would work. We could highlight it with some of our blue. We used carbon scoring glue on this, I believe, and which is a fast palette color, I think. But we could do black with our straps and bags, which would allow us to repeat the black down here. Even though black is the color that usually tells you not to look at a place, it's still fair to repeat it. Like if you only have one black thing on a model, that can stick out like a sore thumb too. Unless the thing is like a greatcoat that kind of like is on the above and the below. So the bigger a thing is, the more you don't really have to worry about repeating it. So like this blue, when I did repeat it, it makes it look a little nicer. And if I repeat it up here, that'll be nice and pleasing because it'll balance out the blue up here. But I don't have to necessarily because I've got the blue and it does go around the whole model. It's just going to make it look better if we repeat it a little stronger up top because it's very strong down here. And it's really the only strong color on the model. Yeah, your search history is doomed after that one. Let me see. I'm pretty sure I was missing stuff. Let's see here. Yeah, right. Actually, I'm using a warm black already, technically. My walnut is, but since I'm starting with the shadow there, it's actually going to come up as a brown. But yeah, whether you choose a warm or cool black to match, that's actually a very European thing. The whole philosophy of keeping the model generally warm or cool. It is a philosophy. You can choose to use it or you can choose not to use it. Often I find, like many things that I learn from the European painting community in general, I often find that they are more effective on larger models. Although color composition on these little 28s is a thing, I find that sometimes it's less effective, maybe just because your eye has less distance to travel. And sometimes I just don't want to make everything cold. Like, I am going generally cold with this. And I could take the brown leather up in a very cold way if I wanted to. But I mean, I'm blatantly working against the keep the model cold thing with the skin tone. So yeah. But that as far as repeating black around the model, yeah. That's why you would do that. Mostly I'm just dissatisfied with these pants. I'm grumpy at the pants today. I'm a grumpy pants. Or these are grumpy pants because they are grumpy enabling pants. Sometimes on a model I'm just like, why? I'm just like, why didn't you do X? Why didn't you just make them pants without the metal knee pads? Why didn't you make them all metal if you were going to make them metal? Yeah, dark elf skin. Dark elf shadow. Yeah, did you see my Payne's Gray recipe, though, Inara? In yesterday's... You're on my Patreon, right? I put out that, the classical Payne's Gray recipe, or one of them, on that Gray's PDF that I put out. And if you look at the sample that I did, it is actually purplish. And if you added a little bit more of the red, you could get to purple. Thanks, Riot Boy. Yeah, I'm just the kind of thinking that way. I was actually thinking about highlighting this leather with brown oxide, which is one of the colors that we used in her hair. So it would bring up the warmth and it would track okay. Where I'm split still is on the leather in the middle here. If I want to go black with it with the blue highlights. Now, this is up against the blue, so that would be a reason not to do it, and this is up against the blue as well. But it would give me more blue up here, and then it would let me go black down here. There isn't a lot of room for highlights down here on her leggings, though, so it's like, Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm thinking maybe I just go brown with everything, repeat the warmth then all around the figure, because if I go with the walnut with the highlights at the center here, it'll be different from the blue, and I'll just go black down here and use the black as a, hey, don't look at this. Sorry. No, Dusky Skin is shadow, but Dark Elf, it has no brown in it. So Dusky Skin Triad was the brownish, was kind of the volcano-ish brown Dark Elf skin. But Dusky has no brown in it. Or, sorry, Dark Elf has no brown in it. Dark Elf is a gray-purple, and that's it. So if it reads brown, it could be your eyes picking up the red in it, because, or no, there is, yeah, because there is red, because it's a violet, it's a purpley gray. So it shouldn't, Dark Elf, Dusky is very brown. Dark Elf should not be brown at all. Has no brown in it whatsoever. Has no yellow in it, so that usually means 0. If you're picking up on any warmth in it, it would be the red. Does that make sense? Because remember the difference between a brown and a gray is usually blue or yellow. So with the brown, you've got more yellow, and with the gray, you've got more blue. But yeah, if you go look at the Patreon PDF from yesterday, if you're on my Patreon, it's a $5 tier. I did grays, and I did one of the classical recipes for the original Payne's Gray, which nowadays they totally half-ass, by the way. I feel okay using a swear word on this stream because many of you are from Lucas' stream. But they do. They took Payne's Gray, which used to be actually a very complex, cool gray, and they decided that they could make it cheaper and easier by just using black and a blue. So they'll use black and ultramarine, or they'll use black and phthalo blue. And it's like, well, now it's just a dark blue. It's not a gray anymore, folks. Just saying. So... yeah, Dusky Skin, yep. I really don't want to use... I am very much if I don't want to draw attention to something, I don't want to put brown next to brown. I'd much rather go with the black. And maybe highlight it with just a touch of the blue. It'll still be dark enough. I don't know, maybe. I don't like to cross the streams. And this is your suggestion is perfectly valid, Riot Boy. It's just that something I don't like to do. I actually don't like to use 2 different browns that are both in the same shade, like dark. I don't like to use a warm and a cool brown together. I think it's annoying and confusing. For me. It's only for me. That's only my judgment call. But, I mean, you can make it work, right? As I always say on this stream, like, when you get to this point in your painting, so much of it is personal preference. Color composition and color choice, it becomes part of your style. It says something about you and who you are as a painter in the choices you make. And people will learn to look for that. If you like to take dark browns and choose warm and cool ones, and you like to play with that and put them next to each other and make them work together in interesting and clever ways, that says something about your painting style, and your fans are going to learn to look for that kind of thing, right? It's that kind of thing. Payne's Gray... It's okay, Riot Boy. No, I like you bringing this stuff up because it's different philosophy. And I love to be able to tell people and to show people that there are different philosophies. You don't have to do it the way I do it. Like, I think a lot of streamers are just like, do it this way. And I'm just like, no, you can do it these ways, right? And your choice should be you. Your choice should be like, if you really enjoy doing that, you should do it. Like, you'll figure out a way to make it work. You'll figure out a way where it looks really cool. So one of the original Payne's Gray recipes, as you will find out if you read my PDF, was ultramarine blue scarlet lake and yellow ochre, which if you look at it is obviously a primary triad gray. They may have added a little black if they wanted it darker. I did not add black to my sample. I did a swatch in the PDF. It shows you the color, but you can easily see that there is a little bit of a purple shift to that color as I mixed it. And if you want it less purple, you add in, obviously, yellow, the complement of purple. And if you want it more purple, you could add a touch of red. So, Payne's Gray is not even an oil painter. It's a canvas painter's color because it exists in acrylics too, Hendrik. you know, it exists in acrylic paints, but it's an artist paint color. And I used to love it. Love, 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 love it. And then when I looked at it, you know, recently, like in the last 10 years, I saw that they'd pretty much just made it, well, as Michael Proctor says, if you want an equivalent for the current Payne's Gray as it is bottled, just pick a blue liner. Blue liner is what you want. No idea, Pendrick. You'd have to look up the history of Payne's Gray. All right, I am going to decide and just do warm on these. Take this walnut brown and do all the leather. We'll block it all in. Hey, crows. Whoa, it's almost a double. Almost a double subversary. There, you got a little bit. Yeah, one of my patrons asked why I didn't put oil paint, or suggested that I put, uh-oh. That was not quite what I wanted to do. Suggested that I put oil painting terminology into that was the only thing they had a problem with in the terminology PDF that I put out for my $2 tier this month. But I pointed out that, one, all the color theory stuff, and the brush stuff, and, like, the color composition stuff, and even the pigment stuff, like, it's all, like, it doesn't change, right? And also, the main reason I didn't do it is that I am not an expert in oils. I used to paint with oils a lot when I was in college. It was one of my favored mediums. But since then, specifically using oils for miniatures, I've only done one model. And I've only used, really, 1 or 2 different oil lines. So I don't have... like, and even the brush techniques are the same, though. That's the thing, is like so much of it is the same. And I think that's what people miss, is that you can still glaze with oils. You can still dry brush with oils. You can obviously blend with oils. You can layer with oils. You just need to wait for your substrate to dry. You know, there's no reason to layer with oils unless you're trying to do textures and stuff usually. But I mean, like, you layer with oils when you're doing underpainting, and then you put your stuff over the top. I mean, and underpainting is the same. In fact, underpainting with oils is even more effective than with acrylics. So, it's, yeah. Yeah, you did. Quite a bit. Hold on. I'm missing it. Yeah. Yeah, we're using the same colors, although, like I said, a lot, Riot Boy, the thing these days, though, is that a lot of the old colors are being replaced by non-toxic organic pigments that are high density. So, like, instead of cobalt blue, you're going to get cobalt blue hue, and it's going to be usually an organic phthalo that they've just formulated to be slightly higher coverage, and then they're usually adding in another color to match what cobalt looks like. So when you hear that, when you see that hue on the back of an artist paint, that just means, yeah. And I mean, well, let's face it, the reason that this is a thing is that some pigments are just utilitarian and, like, have become foundational, and they're easy to mix with, and they're relatively cheap, so they're not changing, like phthalo blue, phthalo green. You're not going to see those guys go away. And artists have had centuries to figure out, like, different colors of paints for a palette, a mixing palette that satisfies, like, all the things they want to do. So that's why stop having yellow ochre, which is yellow oxide now, right? Why stop having that color when you've got centuries, actually millennia with the ochres, of humans just, like, learning how to use, like, red and brown and yellow and black to create the effects that they do, right? So why would you go and, like, make different, like, colors when you've got those and they're foundational? And I mean, at Reaper, I used a wheel of a dozen pigments, plus I had access to some extra pigments, but the extra pigments I had access to were mostly just the off, like we used a green shade phthalo blue for most of our mixing, but I had access to a red as well, you know, or we would have something where I had a green shade yellow, but I also had a high density green shade yellow so that I could make colors that covered a little better, that still had a yellow base. So, but I mean, humans can only see certain colors, but that's not the reason, Pendrake, because it's like, it's just there are certain foundational colors that enable you to mix all those colors, right? Like, so any pigment that you cannot easily mix from other colors is essentially its own thing that then you can use to mix different things. So I can mix a color that looks like yellow ochre, and I do every time I make my NMM gold recipe, and I don't use actually yellow ochre oxide. But I won't have the coverage. It won't have the same characteristics. So one thing to remember about these artist pigments is that one reason some of them became so prevalent is coverage, like cadmiums. There's no reason to use cadmium red. It's an ugly ass color. This is the Lucas stream. That's two A-bombs I've dropped. But anyway, but it's ugly. It's tomatoey. It's awful. At least in oils it is or was. I guess the modern cadmiums, actually, they figured out a way to make it brighter. But man, for a while, that was the ugliest red anybody would use. Why? But you used it because you wanted coverage. And there was no other red with that coverage. There still is no other red with that coverage. They can get close with organic high density reds, but they can't quite hit it. So yeah, the bomb. I didn't drop an F, just an A. Although David and I did get I just made apparently spewed a slogan off. Just effing paint it. Last night, David's like, we need to say that more often. Stop thinking, just effing paint it. But yeah, Payne's Gray is a very good cool tone to use next to umbers. Yes, it was. I talked about that yesterday, Big Chimpo. There was an artist, I forget if it was Tissot or who, but there's somebody who did seascapes. I can't remember who he was. I think he was, it was post-Renaissance, I think, for sure, because I think Rose Madder came along later. But it was it was a beautiful rose pink, so great for sunsets and sunrises, but it was fugitive as anything. So this guy's paintings, he loved it. And even though the manufacturer told him, no, it's going to fade, he still loved it too much to give it up. And he used it all the time. So now when you look at his seascapes, it's all like cloudy. Like you've lost the matter. It's just like this really faded kind of suggestion of pink. And it took people a while to realize that, no, they used to be really bright, but they're not because it faded out. Riot Boy, a lot of 80s fantasy art was produced for book covers, okay? So first start with that. Then understand that the publishing industry has marketing teams that define the genre identity. Like, this is the sort of cover that today's fantasy reader is going to want. And so once a certain book or two with an orange and red cover sold well, the convention flipped that way because then that became the expectation that the marketing department decided readers want. And sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. But you can see this cycle through the years as paintings get replaced by just text and symbol covers. And then maybe you go back to paintings a bit and it varies, right? It varies through the years. And some publishers will tend to go more art and some publishers will go to more symbolism. And it varies. It varies very much. So it really, right. Well, and Riot Boy, the other thing to remember is the 80s was when advertising was really high gamma. Like everything was, they would take a photo, like they would take a picture, they would scan the cover or whatever they did, right? Then they would up all the saturation because in the 80s, everybody thought that's what marketing had to be. Bright colors was what people loved. And I know this because, sorry, Dave, I'm going to throw you under the bus, because at Reaper, we're still, because the bosses grew up, and started the company in the early 90s, they were very much Ed and Dave were very much in that mindset. Bright colors, bright colors, bright colors. And you can see that on some of Reaper's early marketing and even now. So it's a thing from the 80s. It is a thing from the 80s. Then, you have a different swing maybe in the 90s and then in the aughts, right? But marketing has fads just like everything else. And if you started your marketing career during a certain time period, chances are you're always going to like that aesthetic. Like that's the aesthetic where your brain has gone, that sells, right? So you have to make an effort to like embrace a different marketing aesthetic. But then where do you go? Because there's all this conflicting information on, you know, what's a good marketing for today, right? But yeah. Right, but you can look at a piece and you know it's the 80s, right? You can look at a piece and know. And then the other thing, don't mistake the yellows, the use of yellow ochre for skin tones. Back in like the 70s to 80s, that's actually an oil painting thing. You can see it in Elmore's work even. You can see it obviously in as early as Frazetta's work, Boris Vallejo. You see that yellow skin tone. And if you sample that, if you throw it into an image editor and you sample it, you're going to see a lot of yellow ochre. You're going to see a lot of yellow ochre base. And then they're using greens and reds to introduce tones to make the skin more complex. But Frazetta especially loves that yellow skin tone, and that carried over to a lot of other painters. And so you see that golden tone a lot. And it's oil painting in specific. I think that with acrylic, you get more mixing, like you get less of that glaze over, you get more of that like starting with your mixed color and you know, maybe mixing in a bit more reds and pinks, I don't know. But it is interesting, and it's an aesthetic, it's a specific, yeah. Yes, so 2 colors you want. And actually, I'm doing a PDF for a coachee right now, Riot Boy, like about how to match that skin tone with acrylics. So maybe after I do the PDF for him, I'll adapt parts of it to put on my Patreon for like my $10 tier, because it's a lot of work, but it's fun because I get to go and look at a lot of Frazetta stuff, and he had a specific painting he wanted to copy. But if you like that, there are 2 colors you need. I have one here, but the other one. So you definitely want to get the yellow, right? Today it's yellow oxide. It used to be yellow ochre. Obviously, nobody's digging up the particular ochre dirt that used to be used. This is the chemical modern synthetic equivalent of it. Obviously, you want to pick up some yellow oxide or yellow. Some paints still call it yellow ochre, but it's the same kind of thing. You're just trying to hit that color. And it's going to look dark. But when you add white to it, it's going to blossom. It's going to turn very yellow. So the other one you want is, I don't have it right here, but you want a raw sienna. So if you look on, if you're familiar with Darren Hahn, are you familiar with Darren Hahn? He does the super photorealistic busts. And if you look at the colors that he's using a lot of the raw sienna instead of the ochre. It gives you a little bit of a different effect. Darren Hahn. Let me see if I've got him on my Facebook. He will blow your mind. So Darren Hahn, let's see, he's trying to... That's the bust, by the way. Here's the name. That is actually a bust. Yeah. So I analyzed his colors, and for a lot of it, this is a great example of Asian skin color too. Obviously, you've got very little pink, but it's very understated. But he's using a lot of, in my opinion, when I was looking at his colors, raw sienna with white, and usually magenta. He's just so good. Like, and sometimes he's more traditional. Sometimes he's going a bit more traditional with his stuff. With his smaller busts, you can't get as photorealistic, but he's still freaking amazing. Just freaking amazing. Like, he's analyzed it. He's got it down. But yeah, he does vary. Like, you can see here, this is a very grayed out skin tone, right? But it's great to color sample his work because he gets such realistic effects. So if you really want to know, like, you know, how to do this stuff, like, you can sample colors and get close. I really like his work, and I like, let's see here. Oh, is that a Tomb Raider? It is kind of a Tomb Raider. I'm looking for another good one to show. Let's see here. I haven't looked at his Facebook for a while. Not going to show that one. That's nude. But, like, just looking at his stuff is just fantastic because you can see that right there, that's raw sienna. Once you get used to pigments, you can really pick it out. It's a little bit of a brownish yellow, and it's not as strong And I find it a little easier to blend with. But yeah, just it's amazing what he does. And you can really see like what the skin tones look like and where the masses are. So if you want to get better at face painting, don't look at Darren Hahn's stuff and throw away your brushes like Caerindra just did. Just look at Darren Hahn's stuff and notice where he's highlighting stuff. Like, notice where he's placing his highlights. Notice where, you know, like where he's shading. Now, these are much bigger busts. Remember that. So you got to overemphasize, right? But yeah, but you can learn a lot by looking at some of his stuff. And he very much, in my opinion, uses... Oh, there's a Bill Murray. That's a work in progress. So actually, this is kind of cool because you can see how foggy it starts. And then you can see he's just going to tighten it up and tighten it up and tighten it up. And he's overemphasizing the reds. Those are going to de-emphasize eventually. Raw sienna specifically. Yellow oxide. You could use either a naphthol or a magenta. I think he varies it. I've seen him use a magenta, but this one is definitely more of an orangey red, maybe even a cadmium. It could also be a red oxide. So this is actually pretty close if you look at the red oxide and then you look at that color. So you can use a brown red instead of a straight up red, but I'm willing to bet the nose is made more with a traditional red because you can see the orange there and you can see the not so orange there. So yeah, so he's really good at lighting. He's really good at realism. You can definitely see he's stippling a ton, right? Look you can see the dots. You can see the little creases. This is great stuff. And he's using little lines where you can see the brush strokes, look. But think about how fine you got to get there. And that's why you can see that this is a very large bust, right? But you can see that he's stippling a ton. You can see the dots. See the dots. When you really blow it up and get in on it, you can see it. So it's almost pointillist at this point. I really love looking at his works in progress because it shows you. Oh, never mind. That's a tiny head. Never mind about the bigger bust thing. You want to see how little that is? This is pretty insane. Oh, this is so insane, guys. I would have sworn that was a bigger bust. I was wrong. Are you blown away now? I'm freaking blown away. I hear that he actually... I heard a rumor, and I don't know if this is true. But I heard that he actually paints by looking at a screen where he's got a camera on his model, and he's essentially staring at the screen because he can blow it up really big and place his brush marks. Yeah, obviously. Yeah, so now your minds have all been blown. And in my mind also, because Jesus, usually when I see him working on stuff that's so elaborate, it's big. But yeah, he's just really good. He's studied the colors, obviously, to use. And he's gotten there. He's just really good. Really, really, really good. Like, really, really, really good. Of course, I suspect a lot of the sculpts are supporting this, but some of it may be paint plastic surgery. So, yeah. He's really good. So just, yeah, friend him on Facebook or follow him on Facebook or whatever on Facebook. But he uses a lot of raw sienna. The thing about the raw sienna is it's a little more muted. The thing about yellow ochre or yellow oxide, Riot Boy, is that it can go very, very yellow. And even though it doesn't look like it. And so, because once you add white, it tends to boof. Whereas the raw sienna is more of a brown. And so you get a yellowy color, but it's a yellowy brown. And so you've got that muted tone you need for skin tones. It's also a little more transparent. So you can work with it with glazing and stuff. Darren Hahn, Darrenhan. Hold on. I just went away from it. There it is. Got it? Yeah, so go look at his stuff. He is amazing. He will, oh, he lives in Hangzhou. Okay, so he's Chinese. Very, very good artist. Very, very good artist. I wish more of his stuff was in English because, like, I would totally, like, grab one of his video courses. But yeah, he's, coffee is for stippling. Oh, thanks. Oh, I'll have to look that person up too, Miniatures Den. So, wait, it's gonna go. Kigo. I have to like look up that name that Miniatures Den gave us. Kigo. Kurogami, huh? Is he Canadian? I'm not coming up with too much, and I don't have any common friends, so maybe he's not on Facebook. Anyway, well, back to work. Back to work. But yeah, there's just so many great painters out there now. There's so many. When I was first learning, it was relatively small. Now it's exploded. And that is the way it's gone with a lot of creative fields, actually. Thanks to the internet. We can pretty much thank the internet for this. Because it's the same in writing. Like, like indie publishing, where I am. Like, there's a crap ton of people putting stuff out there, right? And although a lot of it is, not necessarily great or even outright bad, a lot of it is very good. And because the internet has just enabled people to learn, to find information they need, especially with mini painting. So I'm just going to paint over the whole thing, even the metallics parts on these buckles, just because I'm going to come back to them. I still have to do the chainmail down here, so I've still got metallics to deal with. But yeah, the internet has opened up so many creative things for so many people. And when you've got so many people trying new creative things, because now they can watch a YouTube video on it, you're going to have people getting really good. And so now there's so many great painters out there, so many more than there used to be. It seemed like when I was started in around 2000, it was a fairly small world. You still had great people, but it's like you'd know them all. It was very rare to get a sleeper. But then as the internet really picked up and YouTube became a thing and classes and seminars and everything, and now you guys can get a jump start on so many great techniques from so many amazing painters with different styles and methods and philosophies. And now it's there's just an insane amount of talent out there. Do you think so, Luca? Do you think it's gotten harder to stand out over the years? Are you painting a dwarf? Another dwarf? Did he at least send you a sexy female dwarf? Which Patreon? Sorry. I'll go back, Riot, and I'll look. Oh, Kaha's. Yeah, well, and that makes sense, right? I try to make things very accessible in general. My lower levels are more for intermediate painters, beginner intermediate, and my upper levels are more for, I'm getting up there, more refined. But even then, I still try to kind of relate stuff, because I know a lot of my audience are just starting out. Because I get a lot of people from the Reaper audience, and Reaper is very much, I think, just like Games Workshop, it's an entry-level drug. It gets you into the hobby. And then, yeah, but a lot of the very high-end painters, they want to teach high-end painting, for sure. I like to teach beginners and intermediate painters, but I can see why Kaha would be like, here you go, sink or swim, boom. Everyone is, yeah. Yes. Because there's a difference, right, Miniatures Den, between, say you take Ben Comet's Patreon, and you learn Ben's tricks. And your painting will start out, just like Luca says, your painting will start out looking like Ben Comet's, so that when you go to, and this happens to, I think, almost everybody, because you start out and you're you have a favorite painter, and if you do that sort of thing, you can study their style and become like them. Then, though, what you really have to do is switch gears and either study many other painters to round out your style, or you need to start iterating. And that's when you can get your own style, where you'll start to split. When I started painting, Jennifer Haley was the rage, right? Jen and I met her, and she became my best friend, or one of my best friends. And, I painted a lot like Jen for like a year in there. And then I just started going elsewise. Like, I just diverged. And I don't remember if I did try to study other people's work, but I also came from an art background, so I was familiar that there were other styles. And that's when you can become more yourself. So what I usually would tell you guys is start by maybe studying your favorite painter, because it's going to be fun for you, right? Because you love their work, and studying their work is going to be fun for you because you love their work. And maybe you can figure out how it kind of functions. And if they have a Patreon, great. Dive in, learn from your favorite. But then figure out some other favorites that have different styles. See if you can learn from them. Maybe even go and try to learn from somebody with a style that's totally different and see what you get from that. And what happens if you are like open is you will slowly integrate the techniques that make sense to you, and you'll kind of fade away from the techniques that don't. And that's when you can become your own painter self. Yes. Yes, there were always mattress commercials. Yes, true. It's true. Yeah, I've heard that about Kaha. Like, she's not big into that. Yeah. uh, it's different. Do you want something a little more tart and acidy, or do you want something a little more sweet and savory, Pendrake? Just ask yourself that. Thanks, Relapse. But yeah, that's kind of what, when I teach a lot of painters who are intermediate looking to get better. And I will tell them, choose one to start with, especially if you feel overwhelmed. But choose more than one painter to study. And try to make sure that they're not like all painting the same. Obviously, if you learn from Ben Comets and then you choose a couple other people who work closely with Ben Comets and paint a lot like him, you're going to be like, oh, and your style's going to move that way. But you could also choose painters that have a similar approach, maybe, but do it differently. Maybe you decide to go for Angel Giraldez, and you learn maybe some airbrushing, and you learn like the way he tackles a figure, and it's still very punchy, and it's still very high contrast and very saturated, but maybe it's a little bit different, right? And maybe, then you go to Luca because you're like, oh, I really like light, I want to learn more about light, and Luca really nails that stuff, and so you're going to take some stuff from Luca, and by the end, you're going to be kind of a blend, and then maybe you just try a couple things on your own that make sense to you. But that's how people ask how you develop a style, and that's how you do. It's not just learning from one painter. It's nothing you can learn from one painter. Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. I'm curious about Kaha stuff. I'm pretty sure I could, like, see what she's doing. And she's a very stylistic painter, which I used to love and gravitate toward. And now I've gone the opposite. I love the realism. But yeah, it's totally like, watch different people. And I mean, even if they don't say so, I'm always saying so. But even if they don't say so, there is no one way. There is no best way to do X or Y. There's just different ways, different approaches. And it's okay for you to throw out somebody's approach, even if they're a better painter than you. Like, if you don't like the way that I do metals, you don't like the way I do NMM, you don't like the way I highlight and shade my white, just toss it out. I'm not going to get offended. You're going to maybe make up a way to do it that works for you, and your stuff's going to look better than mine. Like, I am one of those people who, because I love to teach, nothing makes me happier than one of my students, like, totally, like, punching out of the field and being better than me. Like, I want you to beat me in painting competitions. Then I know I've done my job. So, yeah, that's all it. Yeah, and a lot of painters get really concerned with that relapse, but you find it organically. You find it naturally. It's like, and you find it after painting quite a bit. You don't have to necessarily finish things, but it helps to finish things. because that's, that's when you really learn by going through the entire model and learning the entire process, including the refining and fixing process and maybe the adjusting process that you're really only going to hit at the end of the model. So it is valuable to finish things. You can learn a lot without. I know a lot of people just kind of, what was it you guys were telling me about the painter the other day that refers to his shelf of Lost Love as the sketchbook, right? And that's valid. You can do that. You can sketch your way, but you eventually do need to finish a few things to get to a certain stage of painting. See, that's weird because it's gone back and forth relapse, okay? The push to super smoothness started with Rackham, the confrontation line, in, the late, or I want to say like mid-90s, like early mid-90s. I think it's mid to late 90s. Because Rackham was doing smooth, and smooth was already being pushed in the US. And then, as a rebound from that, around the late aughts, like 2008, 2010, then there started to be this push for super texture. Everybody just wanted texture. That's when the F smoothness thing came around. In reality, which you gravitate towards is going to be up to you. Like, there are places for smoothness, especially if you're painting sci-fi. Then you've got to figure out how you're going to do some smoothness, especially if you're painting even when you're painting like plastic and ceramic armor, stuff like that, then you do need some smooth. Chrome, certain skin tones, usually young female and male skin tones, young person skin tones are very smooth, especially if you're working busts. So it's useful, right? But it's situationally useful. And I go somewhere in between. I like the smooth where it makes sense. And I think that you should learn how to do it. But if you prefer textures, then go that way. It's part of your style, right? Kirill textures everything, but Kirill can still do smoothness when it's warranted. So it's like toolbox. It's a toolbox. Nobody should make everything smooth, unless that's the only tool. Unless they don't understand textures yet, then that's their thing. Or maybe that's just their style. Yeah. Yeah, study, study, study. Yep. Yeah, I don't even have to study my paint job after necessarily. I can feel it during the paint job. I'm like, oh, this is working, or oh, this isn't working. I'm going to go and try something else, right? Yeah. Yeah, so. But yeah, skin tones, sorry. Okay, I think we got it. Yeah, so I mean, I don't like the movement that just says F smoothness, because I think that's cutting off a tool that you could use that is very useful in certain things. And I also enjoy painting smooth. I do. It's just something I really enjoy because it takes a lot of time, and it's like you get really into it and you're really perfecting it. It's just a part of that I like. GW is always GW is going to go towards smooth. Like, that's their style. They've had it for years now. They never embraced the texture movement. Although, if you look at the Golden Demons pretty carefully from the last couple of years, you will see models that were highly textured that won. Yeah, I'm with you, right, boy. That's the right way. Yeah, when I first heard the F smoothness thing, I just felt attacked because I love it. I love to play with it. And I think that it is correct for certain surfaces. And when I get the opportunity to do it, I enjoy doing it. Oh, wow. Computer generated. Those were sculpted. Hate to say it. Maybe for the plastics. But I don't know. I thought they were all traditional. I don't think their 3D modeling was being used for vehicles at that point. I know GW put out an article in their White Dwarf when they first started using 3D modeling, for their grav tanks and stuff. But I don't think Rackham used it because their stuff was really organic. Yeah, exactly. That's why I didn't like that movement. I mean, I know it was, them kind of a joke and everything, but it didn't come off that way because people grab onto that kind of idea, right? They grab onto it, they run with it, and then, like you say, they say it in front of a young painter or somebody who's just starting out, and they kind of go, oh, No, I'm with Riot Boy. The rephrase is to learn all the techniques and to use a texture or lack thereof appropriate for your surface. All right, boy, we've been talking a lot today, and I'm like totally distracted. Distracted. Where is my black? I use Dragon Black so it has a little bit of color in it. You know, I can't diss GW culture entirely. I mean, okay, just like with any culture, there are people, right? And we all know that people have individuals who maybe are sometimes a bit toxic, or something. But that is true of every painting culture. I mean, Reaper tends to be a much more forgiving and nicer intro culture, which I like. That's what I like about it. But I mean, you guys know this. You go on other things if you go, and it doesn't have to be a GW centric forum either, but any painting forum, people are going to be opinionated. You know, maybe they give you feedback that feels pretty crushing, you know, because maybe they think that's how you're going to get better. You know, it's people. It's just people. So, although I think GW, because it is a competitive environment, right? These people are playing the game. They're trying to win. There's a big emphasis on winning. There's an emphasis on tournament play. And there's an emphasis on, even in the painting, on competition, because Golden Demon is a 3-2-1, top 3 painting competition. So I think you attract a competitive mindset crowd then, an audience. And I think that with that, you get maybe a little bit less beginner friendly. That said, I made some really good friends at Golden Demon back in the old days, and I still really enjoy the company of them. So, Right. Yes, this is true, Miniatures Den. Right, exactly. Yeah, there's all sorts of different ways to blend. But yeah, so there's so much. Yes. And that no matter what you're doing. If you're doing texture, if you're doing smoothness, if you're doing something in between, like Miniatures Den means placing colors and value accurately where they belong so they look like they're blended through precision. Then if you want to come back and smooth the way you like to smooth, if you like to glaze, like me, you can do that. Or you cannot do that. It's up to you. It's your model. But yeah, so yes, coming back around, learn from different people and practice and experiment a lot. And more than anything, have fun with it. Have fun practicing and experimenting. If you can sit down to paint at night and instead of looking at your model and sighing and going, oh, this isn't done yet, it's going to take me forever, you can say, I'm going to just screw around tonight and have some fun and see what I can do on these, on this cloak or whatever. If you can come to it with that excited kind of, I'm going to play around and this is going to be fun attitude, the same attitude we have when we're kids, right? When we get to start a new art project. If you can recapture some of that, you're going to be happier with your hobby. And you're going to learn, because when we're in a relaxed state of just enjoying the process is when we learn best. Not when we're all anxious about doing it right or doing it just the way so-and-so does it. Or, I've got to learn this. My life depends on it as a miniature painter. Oh my gosh. Ermagerd. So just relax, have fun, and enjoy your hobby. And you will get a style eventually if you paint enough. My style, my first style, I should say, because I've departed from that, was just literally something I stood up, I was painting stuff for eBay, I stood up to go use the restroom at the game store, I came back to the table where I was painting, I just looked at my group of models on the table, and I just went, I have a style. Like, it was crazy. I had not set out to do it at all. It was just I had painted so much at that point. One body part a day. Yeah, for sure, Riot Boy. Orcs, huh? Oh, I love orcs. I love orcs. They have the best vehicles. Best vehicles. Because I can't do smooth on vehicles to save my soul. And I really like the dirtied up, weathered up orc vehicles. I think it's super fun. You know, if you want to be, like, just that color person, Hugh, you go for it. Don't feel like you have to be a great painter either. Just paint for fun. Paint to enjoy it. I was talking about this a bit yesterday, but since I'm trying to work on a Golden Demon model for next year, but I realized that I was getting that competitive mindset again, and I realized I didn't want to. Really, I want to paint this model because I really like the model. And so I really should just paint the model, have fun, not try to make everything super perfect. And then when I'm done with it, if I still like it, then maybe I refine it a bit. But I really should just paint it. Like, even if it doesn't win at Golden Demons, these days, my only goal is to, like, go to competitions with my husband and maybe have something to enter that doesn't suck, right? Something that I am happy with. I won my Golden Demons, thank God, back in the day. So, unlike David, who's chasing the win, I'm not. It would be cool to have a new one, but, you know. Just grab your airbrush. Yeah, I hear it, Riot Boy. Sheesh, why isn't this done yet? Yeah. I'm battling my mindset for that on my book right now, on book 2. Part of me is, sheesh, why isn't this done yet? I want to get it done. And the other part of me is like, no. Back off. You know what? I think we're going to make the scabbard white, guys. Yeah. Well, you'll get there, right, boy? You get there. You'll get there. Yes, Shadow Raven. Just like David said last, just effing paint it. Oh, nice. You paint outside, huh, Gibson? That's hardcore. I find natural daylight to be super difficult to paint in. Unless it's, like, really, like, just ambient. But you'll get there, Riot Boy. I mean, if you... Okay. The way to get there is to not expect perfection of yourself. To just be happy with you know, hitting a new level or producing something that's pleasing to you, right? Because if you do have too perfectionist of a mindset, then it's hard to get to that point. It's hard to hit that point where you're like, dang. But if you just enjoy it and you try new techniques and you give yourself room to learn, you will get to that point where you're like, dang, how the heck did I do that? Oh my gosh, I need to figure it out because I want to duplicate it later. The OMG, I don't know how I did that. So I'm going to use my Akata blue to move in this really pale blue on the scabbard. Since it's a thin line, I feel like it's going to be okay. And I've got enough white elsewhere. Well, he's only been competing for a couple of years, and he's gotten very close 2 years. Like, he got close the first year with his Marathi. He got one of the commendation things. But last year, apparently, afterwards, he was told that he was in the running for the demon. He just didn't quite make it. Like, the other piece beat him out just barely. So he's getting closer. David's challenge is that he doesn't really like the GW style. So he's running the hard road that Kaha rides every time she goes to Golden Demon, which is, I'm going to paint this in my style the way I want to. And I'll try to choose models where my style isn't disadvantaged for Golden Demon. And sometimes I might win, and most of the time I'm probably not. So, whereas I actually do enjoy painting Golden Demon style sometimes. Like, because I like to swap up my style. I like to try different things. But David really doesn't. Like, David just wants to organically be himself, which is super respected. And I'm using some walnut mixed into my Akata blue now to get a little bit of shadow here. A little bit of cold shadow close to the leg. Just a little. Oh, sunshade, yeah. Although, you know, it's a shame and yet it's not, Riot Boy, because like she is continually pushing. And when she does win, it's just a victory. It's a victory for the hobby. It maybe shifts the mindset a little bit. Like that giant, the big giant that she won with in America, it looks like it's painted in watercolor. It is so far from the Games Workshop style. Yeah, and it's because I'm not anti-Golden Demon. Like it's, yeah, it was amazing. Like that, you look at it and it looks like it's painted on watercolor paper. Like it's beautiful. So for me, I don't know. I just, if she was judged, like it would, I don't think it would be as good a competition if she could just walk in and like just sweep, right? With 6 entries and 6 demons. Like some people do in the GW style, but I like to see her bringing it her own way, and I like to see them awarding it. They award it every year, 2 years in a row now. They've given her a demon. So I mean, yeah, it's a little bit of one, a little bit of the other. But the fact that she still manages to win a demon, and who else? There are a couple other pieces. If you look at not necessarily this year's, but I haven't seen this year's. Oh yeah, I did see this year's. But last year's Golden Demons, there were actually some really textured models, or some really a little bit more grungy, not pure GW style, that won also. So I don't know. It's mindset. I kind of feel like if you're gonna go for demons, like you play in their sandbox, and if you want to paint your own style, you go into it knowing it'll be really a super challenge. I like a challenge, so I'm not anti that. And the biggest problem, I think, and this is valid, that we have in America right now is that we don't have Crystal Brush anymore. Or an equivalent high-end competition where you can bring anything and any style. If we had that, I think people wouldn't complain as much about Golden Demons. I know David wouldn't, because his big thing is he'd like to be able to enter anything, and he'd like to be able to paint in his own style and not be handicapped for it, right? And so that's the advantage of having a big show, you know. And you guys, and in Europe, you have Monte Sansevino, so you at least have that. We don't have one in America, or even North America right now. Yeah, we do, and the problem is it's expensive and it's difficult. Yeah. Yes, grossly biased. I know, I judged it one year, Riot Boy. I could tell you stories. But, yeah. But as far as, if you put aside the judging, the good thing about Crystal Brush is you could paint anything, and you could bring your own style, like, to the max, and you would have a chance, right? No, Crystal Brush took out Crystal Brush. When you have a painting competition that costs you 10 grand in prizes every year, and you're not recouping costs, and then you get taken over by a company that actually pays attention to the bottom line, the company is going to be like, why are we doing this? And also that company, the biggest thing that killed Crystal Brush was that CMON moved away from miniatures. Right? When CMON started up, it sold all sorts of miniatures. And then down through the years, that number got lower and lower and lower, and they started doing more and more board games because the money is in the board games. And so as they moved toward the board game model, they moved away from the miniatures model, and then it no longer made sense to do Crystal Brush because it was no longer advertising. Does that make sense? That's the real reason. You can say bias did, Riot Boy, and it certainly was impacting them because they would get fewer and fewer entries, right? But the real thing that took out CMON, the real thing, is that when you are no longer selling miniatures, it doesn't make sense to sponsor a very expensive miniature painting competition, especially if you're getting negative press from it. Yeah. Yeah. It was hard. I mean, I don't want to carry stories because my friend Jennifer Haley was, of course, the photographer for that event and one of the founding, runners of it. And Jen like broke her back every year, guys, getting those photos and getting them to be as good as humanly possible. She would sit there for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours until her hands were ready to kill her. retaking photos and looking at them and selecting the best ones and then retaking them if they weren't good enough. And she's a perfectionist, so that tells you kind of. But yeah, she would break herself every year. So I don't want to diss Crystal Brush entirely, because there were good people who worked for that event. There were good people who cared about that event. It had its faults. I think every competition has something you can complain about. Riot Boy, there was a person who wanted to do it, and I kind of stepped back and left him to it because I have a lot to do. Otherwise, I would be all over that, making a new painting competition. I helped create Reaper Masters, the Reaper Open. I think we would want to run it like World Expo and like Reaper, but we'd probably want it. The guy who was planning to start one up was making it East Coast, which is out where he was. That would be very hard for me. I don't know. We'll see if it comes about. They were talking about kickstarting it. He was talking to Miniature Monthly, Aaron and Liz. I don't know if it's gone anywhere. The guy who wanted to do it didn't have any experience starting up that sort of thing. But you can learn that stuff. So, I don't know. I haven't heard anything, though. I think you would have to kickstart it, Riot Boy, because you're going to need the venue. And the venue is the biggest, baddest thing. Because that's going to cost you thousands, usually. You can go cheaper. But you've got this thing. There's this expectation thing, right? You can't go too cheap or it's really shoddy and nobody wants to come. So you need at least a decent venue. Preferably in a place that is near to other fun stuff going on so that your family can go do other stuff while you compete. Yeah, I believe so. Ed thought so too, Caerindra, the Kickstarter House of Cards. That's why Reaper only runs a Kickstarter every, few years or so. 2 years, 2.5. Yeah, Riot Boy. Yeah, I would like there to be a competitive show that isn't. I mean, that's why a lot of companies use Adepticon, right? For their painting competitions. They're already paying for booth space. Because they're paying for booth space, they can make sales to offset the cost, and then they can run the painting competition on the side. And even Simon did that, right? They had the Crystal Brush booth. The thing is, the Crystal Brush booth was pretty big. It probably cost them a fair amount of money to rent that space. And then they also had to, the personnel to staff it and then pay for the prize money. So it wouldn't surprise me to know that the actual cost of Crystal Brush was more like $30,000. And that's a low estimate, probably. Yeah, venue, cost of staff, and judges. Yeah, staff, if you include judges, cost of prizes. But the cost of the staff also has to include hotel rooms. Because if you're flying in judges, then that's airfares and hotel, right? Venue and insurance. Insurance is expensive. Every time Sophie needs to suck life out of her Reaper staff. Yeah, not much at all, unless you're an individual person trying to put that together. And then think about it. How much are you going to charge for badges if you're going to Kickstarter that? Because the way to Kickstart it is to essentially, Kickstart badges for it so that people, and maybe just donations, so that people can pitch in, get their badge, right? And just, essentially say, hey, we will support this. 45 minutes. Vendors can pay for, if you're, and I mean, a lot of us, if you reach out to a vendor and you can essentially say, hey, we Kickstarted this event, we sold 200 badges, or we sold 500 badges, or whatever, right? But yeah, vendors are a hard sell unless they're local. So maybe you also want to see if there's a local vendor that might help you fund the event. Well, that was Crystal Brush, but there is problems with that, Richard. Like, we do that at ReaperCon for our Best in Show. If you enter the competition, you can vote. And actually, people have always been great about it. I've never disagreed with our Best in Shows. But it can be a popularity contest. So you don't want to let the attendees vote if you're doing a big public vote like Simon. You've got judges in there also, and their vote's way heavier. Yeah. Start one up. The one thing that I would say, yes, you need to have the funds. Yeah. Well, and even then, walking harder. Yeah, you've got to enter into it as a business, right? You want your startup money, but that's not it, because like Lone Star Miniature Painting, they tried to have their historical show right in the Dallas area, And they all chipped in a lot of money, but they hadn't really looked at how do we get money back from this show? How do we actually make it pay for itself? They wanted to have it in a nice hotel because that was the expectation. You know, they and their friends who came to enter were judging, so that was fine. The judging was more or less paid for by that. But there was still a big time money suck for that hotel and insurance. And they ended up like losing money. And then the money that they put in, they're not getting anything back. And then essentially everybody started grumbling at each other and the thing broke up after a couple of years. So it isn't just seed money. You got to be able to figure out a way to make it pay. Yeah, I would do open system or a modified open system Riot Boy like they do at World Expo. A metal system essentially. Because first, second, third is really limiting. The one thing I hated about judging Crystal Brush, and I can say this because I've said it before and nobody's going to take offense at this point, but the one thing that really jarred with my ethic was that there was really no way I could give feedback after the event to the people who entered. And with Crystal Brush, there were few enough entrants that there's no reason why you couldn't have. You could have given feedback to everybody, practically, anybody who cared. But some of the painters who entered were like, you could see what they were trying to do, and they were having some success. They just weren't in top 3 because top 3 was like stacked. And I was really just always kind of disappointed. I was disappointed and disheartened that year. That was my biggest thing that made my heart feel sick after judging Crystal Brush, was that I had no way to talk to people or to even tell them that I was open to giving them feedback. And I really enjoy doing that. So yeah, Hugh, exactly. It's that, right? Except that there are ways, like, you know, Reaper makes it work. Reaper makes our convention work. And our goal is not to make money, but to break even. And that's the way you've got to look at a show like that. But Reaper also is able to use sales, you know, like other companies who get booth space at a convention. Reaper is able to use the whole convention to make the money to offset its cost, and then they also run a painting competition at it, right? So probably the way to do it is the way that Crystal Brush was doing it. It is to work with Adepticon or another large miniatures con, because if you do that, you've already got all the talent coming, right? You've got the talent attending the show, and then you just have to grow your competition. And you need to figure out how to pay for booth space to do that, right? But booth space is a lot cheaper than convention center space. Yeah. It's just you need income streams. You need a way to do income streams. So for a small standalone show like Monte San Savino is in a very small town, so it's probably not that expensive to book. But it's also in a beautiful section of Italy, right? So you've got other stuff you can do, lots of other stuff around, if you're willing to like travel a little bit. So I think that's part of it too, is finding a nice venue that's close to fun stuff that isn't necessarily in the middle of a very expensive area. And you got to figure out like if people are going to be able to get hotel space. And, like, you probably want to produce some merch to sell. Your badge is going to be your main income. You can think about having, like, special pass thing. You can think about hosting seminars and classes and taking a cut off of that. But it's planning, right? It's a lot. Running a convention, even a small one, is a beast. So I'm mixing up some white, sorry. Riot Boy, the one thing I was going to mention to you, if you do reach out to people like Aaron and Liz at Miniature Monthly, because in order to get the support of the community on this, and I told this to the other guy, you want to work with people like that who have a very large platform that can reach a lot of painters. Aaron and Liz are great people, and also since they were working with the other dude who wanted to do this, you could kind of ask them, hey, I heard another guy was working on this, but I'd really like to like do it too. Like, is he still around? Have you heard anything? You know, and if they haven't, then you can say, okay, well, maybe I'll go ahead and develop a business plan for this. I just don't cross the wires. The last thing we need is like 3 different people all trying to make new shows. When really, we just need to focus and get one show done first, and then maybe make more shows. That's my only concern, is that you'd be splitting resources, right? Riot Boy, I think you start with location, because the location is gonna matter a lot. Because is it central? Is it less expensive? Is there hotel space? You know, make sure you've got everything. Maybe you even scout a couple. This is actually what I advise the other dude to do, is scout a couple of locations and then do a breakdown, pros and cons, and look at what it would take. And then when you are, you could talk to local businesses. Yes, exactly. Look at the infrastructure. Look if there's a convention hall or if there's a convention hotel. Hotels are a beast to work with. You should know that. You probably already do. You said you've organized stuff before. Convention centers or halls are probably a lot easier. If there is a close hotel, that will be best. Restaurants and stuff around for people to eat at. You know the drill. But yeah, and if you do look at if you scout out a couple of locations, then you can give people the choice, right? Worldcon does this every year. The Hugo Awards and Worldcon. It will be scouting out for I think 2 years in advance. So then when you go to a Worldcon, you get the option to vote on the 2 years hence location of the next Worldcon. But if you're just looking to start up a show, it's nice because you can let people vote, and you'll find out right away. Like if you have people sign up to your mailing list, you should have a mailing list and a website, or a Facebook group at the very least, just to start it. Then you can transition to a website and an email list. But you want to communicate with the people who are most interested in coming, and you want to take their feedback. So yeah. See, I am not into MailChimp. I have not heard great things for open rates for MailChimp lately. I use MailerLite for my author newsletter. I don't know if that's true. Maybe the people I was reading are just anti-MailChimp, but I had heard that their open rates were not great lately. Okay. Well, cool. Oh, Mancher's Den is saying that it's time for me to stop babbling and let him just effing paint it. But yeah, so that just gives you guys a taste of the amount of organization that needs to happen. If you are not a great organizational person, then I would definitely bring somebody on board who is, to really be able to. Oh, no problem, Riot Boy. It's been fun. You mean those 50 sexy female dwarves? Yeah. Only 50, not 150? I think that's a typo. Yes, Crowley. Yes, sorry. Well, we talked a lot today, and we didn't get a lot otherwise done. Although we have blocked in our composition for the most part. The last thing I'm going to do is paint this chainmail black. You can do. Let me just chat this real quick, Luca, and then you can have the stream. So you've got two choices here. You can either paint it gray, do your metallic, and do a wash, just like any old thing. Chainmail doesn't change a lot, guys, from the way you were taught and the way that it is now. Or you can paint it all black and do just a light brush over the top, not a dry brush, to just pick out the links. And then you do shading, highlighting, yada, yada. I want this to stand out. And with my color composition here, I don't really need more light right here. I need dark. So if you do the black base coat and you do the lightly overbrushed links, it's going to look darker. Whereas if you do the gray with the silver and then shade it, it's going to look lighter unless you pile the shading on. So here, putting this black in, I'll still be able to pick out the links, but overall the chain will appear darker, which goes more with my color composition. It definitely, it helps to split these two parts, for example, stuff like that. So that's why I would make that call on the chainmail to start with. So there we go. We ended on actual education. I'm all for the sexy female dwarf hue. Boobs and no beards. Sorry. I want a female dwarf I can identify with. I really like female dwarves. So, yeah, that's where I am. That's where I am on that dwarf thing. We can agree to disagree. Yes, thanks. Have a great day, everybody, and I will be back, and Luca will be dwarfing, apparently. Dwarfing. I hope you all have a lovely day. I'm going to go play with the pup.